Namaste. I'm Deepti Dutt, Head of Strategic Initiatives at Amazon Web Services Public Sector team in India. In the past, I was part of Aadhaar startup team from 2010 to 2013. It is my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Ganga Kapavarpu, who was the first CFO of India's digital ID project Aadhaar and retired as Deputy CAG, Office of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India.
Aadhaar came into being in 2009, but the spadework and deliberations on the need for Aadhaar had started sometime before. And around 2006, there was an empowered group of ministers that were set up to go into the issues of the need for an identity program. And it started with looking at whether we need a foundational ID over and above an already existing project of giving a multi-purpose identity card to national identity card, which was started with a security initiative in mind. So it was finally decided and approved by the empowered group of ministers that we will have a foundational ID with a development agenda.
Truly, the name Aadhaar itself means foundation in many Indian languages, and India became pioneer in first nationwide digital ID project based on biometric that actually empowers and enables service delivery to the marginalized, and eventually ended up enrolling all the residents of the country. Aadhaar has become daily part of our lives now, be it peer-to-peer financial transactions, opening bank accounts, getting mobile connections. In times of COVID, the entire contact tracing, and now probably the backbone behind world's largest vaccination drive, the CoWIN platform that we have. So on and so forth, the examples go on.
When the first document which came out, which was just merely 20 pages, it had stated out all these things. So it was a foundational program, ID program, to which you would plug and play various programs of Government of India and the states at the federal setup. So be it the very first programs on, let us say, public distribution of food grains, be it the program of financial inclusion, that is linking of bank accounts to an identity number, and also be it giving fuel for cooking fuel. One of the visions was that we should make it a more efficient system. So one of the objectives was to have an ID project so that we give the rightful beneficiary the entitlements and thereby try and plug all pilferages and leakages, etc. And a lighthouse application which was thought of right at the very beginning was financial inclusion. And even to this day, I don't think we have deviated from that objective set up at that time in that little 20-page document.
If I may add to that, whether we look at operational framework of Aadhaar or the technology framework of Aadhaar, I think it was all designed in a way where a plug-and-play platform, API-based interaction, all RESTless services, that any service delivery platform could just plug on to Aadhaar APIs for doing the transactions. Now let's talk about some obstacles. Everything was not so rosy when it started out, right?
I think one of the biggest challenges which we faced was not having legal legitimacy in some sense of the word. What happened was the legal framework was not put in place and we were working based on an executive order. And therefore, there was a lot of resistance and a lot of questions being raised of starting this without an act in place which clearly defined our role, our responsibilities, our objectives, and who are all the players. We were able to overcome this obstacle because of the strong political will that existed, which made sure that we could continue functioning while the legal framework was being put in place. In the very design of Aadhaar, we had made sure that we collect very minimal data, and that minimal data would be such that it would not compromise the individual's privacy, or it's not something which would lend itself to some kind of profiling, for instance. And even when it came to the another design principle, whether it was about doing identification process, that is verification of the identity once an Aadhaar number is given, or whether we were sharing what we call the eKYC, it was all resting on a consent framework. India is a federal country, so we have center which drives certain aspects of the governance, and there is the states level setup. So there was a need for a lot of coordination between the center and state, and that was also proving to be a challenge initially. And the only way of that we managed to overcome was constant, continuous stakeholder management and coordination and engagement with them. So this we managed with one, again, political will, strong messages from the highest authorities at the center, and we ourselves continuously engaging with all of them.
From my program management background, if I talk about what actually caused the biggest ID platform in the world, the success of that, I look at 3 points. One is creating the entire self-incentivized ecosystem. That's the approach that we took, outcome-based, self-incentivized ecosystem, having multiple service providers to ensure healthy competition between them. A second key thing that worked very well for Aadhaar was the systematic program management approach that we had. We were always moving from POCs to pilots to a large-scale rollout. And the scale that we're talking about, 1 billion people, even POCs and pilots were like humongous. Enrollment pilot was for a 100 million population. Yeah, so that 10% of India got enrolled, and then we took feedback from that improvised system before we rolled out for 1 billion. And all this was managed by a core team of multi-skilled stakeholders, core team, UIDAI owned team coming together from different government services as well as private sector. And third, very important point in my head from program management, field operations perspective is quality was baked in and it was not an afterthought. At all levels, be it enrollment, authentication, whatever, we always thought about quality baking in and not as a reactive thing. And that quality was focused from all process, people and platform, all 3 angles. We talk about people, the emphasis that we had on training and certification of enrollment operator, the device certifications and standardization that we went out to do, detailed field processes, checklists and things like that.
I had described about the obstacles and challenges which we faced, and surely I think I wouldn't like any other country to face the similar kind of situations. So what I would say is, first of all, don't embark on the project unless there is strong political will to see it from beginning to end. And the other thing is, get your legal framework in place. Make sure that you have a legal mandate to start doing the job of giving a digital identity to everyone. And along with that, when I say legal framework, I also would include the Data Privacy and Data Protection Act as well. So make sure that all these are in place before you commence.
And if I may add another point, from residents and civil society group, the change management and communication aspect, it becomes very paramount, very important, that how do you really continuously keep engaging residents and civil society groups on those aspects, especially given that most digital ID projects would be rather abstract in nature. It's an ID which does not have any service delivery program associated. So how do you make people understand what the ID is really about, what they're really enrolling for? So I think the continuous change management and communication, what we call IEC, is very, very important for any such program to be successful.